All right, guys, we're going to try Nimbus again. So we're trying Nimbus 2.0. I'm going to give this a go again. And today we're going to talk about arguments from religious experience. And so you see there the big question on the slides. What's the best explanation for all the people who have claimed to have an experience of God or spiritual experience in history? So where I wrote millions, right? But that would be probably presently. But you think about probably billions throughout time, people who've said, I know God, I've met God, I've had a relationship with God. So what do we say about them? And you see the list of options. So one option would be, well, it's a sign of, and it's just a type of mental insanity. In the same way people claim to be Jesus or have delusions of grandeur or have depression or other things, it could just be a mental insanity issue. It could be lying, right? So what reasons can we think of for people deceiving? They claim a heavenly vision, but it's a lie. Third's a little more honest. It's mistaken. So they genuinely believe it. So they're not lying. It's not a mental instability issue like insanity, but they almost like a mirage or a dream, right? It seems genuine, but they're just mistaken about it. Or last is that, yeah, in fact, it feels genuine because it is genuine. So all we're going to do is kind of briefly walk through those four. And as you're doing it, be thinking about your religious experiences and what do those say about the world and the way it's structured, and does God exist, and is appealing to your experience a legitimate way to say it's a reason I believe in God. Okay, so those are the four. First, probably most important we want to say is you cannot prove God's existence just from your religious experience. That's a little too far, because you see there, other experiences I have aren't always genuine. So the sense when you look at the horizon, you see a mirage of water, or you feel like the room is spinning, right? You stand up too quick and the room is not actually spinning, right? It's something going on inside you. So not every experience is genuine. So you can't go, because I have a sense of God, therefore God exists. You don't want to make that logical connection, that hard of a connection. But it doesn't mean you throw it out either, right? Because usually we trust our senses and our experiences. So, while it doesn't prove God, it might very well give us a hint. And if repeated experiences, not one-time events, not random, then it will point in that direction. So first option, type of insanity. So that this would be some type of mental illness. And to give you an example, right, there's obviously many modern ones, but I wanted to read. I'll actually skip to that second one. I'm going to read in 22. So you guys know Saul, Paul, his experience on the Damascus Road in Acts chapter 9. What I find fascinating about the rest of this is if you go and read the rest of the book of Acts, almost any time Paul ends up in front of a Roman governor or in front of a Jewish council and he gets a chance to speak, he appeals to that experience, the Acts 9 Damascus Road experience, as proof of Jesus's divinity and God's existence and all the things. Really, he's pointing about Jesus. So here's Acts 22, 6-11. As I was on my way and drew near to Damascus, about noon, a great light from heaven suddenly shone around me, and I fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to me, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And I answered, Who are you, Lord? And he said to me, I am Jesus of Nazareth, whom you are persecuting. Now those who were with me saw the light, but did not understand the voice of the one who was speaking to me. And I said, What shall I do, Lord? And the Lord said to me, Rise and go into Damascus, and there you will be told all that is appointed for you to do. And since I could not see because of the brightness of that light, I was led by the hand by those who were with me and came into Damascus. All right. So we read this experience Paul had of Jesus. And again, now you're asking, okay, was Paul insane? And that's what we're talking about, mental illness. So there are certain mental illnesses. I believe some is bipolar disorder. It can be a hormonal imbalance, a chemical imbalance in the brain. And there are times when we treat medical illness, we treat mental illness with drugs to try to regulate chemicals. And we know that certain other drugs, you'll hear sometimes advertised that these drugs can give you severe bouts of depression because we know they mess with your chemical or hormonal imbalance in the brain and it has problems. Okay, you'll hear this sometimes with faith is seen as mental weakness. As some sort of crutch or need. So this would be consistent with if all believers are really just mentally weak, or ill. Okay, now, are there any problems with this? Sure. One is, if that were the case, we would expect all believers to show up habitually as more mentally unstable than non-believers, or we'd see more bouts of depression, suicide, anxiety, right? We'd expect that one mental instability to sort of be a precursor for more mental instability. But no, actually rates of depression or suicide are no higher, often lower. And it's actually good evidence that faith helps stabilize your mental, your physical, and overall health. And so that would seem to cut against the idea that it's a symptom, it's a sign of mental instability. And the other question you see under B is, did Paul act insane? Did Jesus act insane? Do believers you know, do they give you the impression of insanity? Now, that's a wide question. You may think of some that you think are a little bit, but overall you'd have to say, if all believers are mentally unstable, does that show up when I talk to them, when they talk to me, when they share what they're experiencing, what they're going through? And I think the problem you see under C is, no, like most believers I've been around, well-grounded people. They're emotionally secure. They're trying to love their kids, love their wife, do the right thing. And so they certainly don't give you the vibe of mental instability. All right, so that's the first option. Second, you see deception. So are all believers lying? Or in this case, are some believers at least lying? And the answer is some, sure. But it's tough to say that all people who've ever reported experiencing God are lying about it. Now, there's reasons why people lie, right? You do it for power. That fits, you see, under B. Some of our cult leaders we studied, absolutely, right? If you create a religion and you are the head of it, you get power, often you could get wealth. And so there would be a motivation to lie about your experiences with God. The problem on the other side is you also have martyrs for the faith, people who, in this case, if they're lying, when they're put to the test, they choose death over honesty. That's tough, right? If you know you're lying, so you think of the earliest believers who persecuted by the Romans for claiming they saw Jesus rise from the dead. Right? That is an experience, a sensory experience. They said, no, I saw him, I touched him. That's the beginning of 1 John, right? Which we have seen, which we have heard, which we have looked on and touched with our hands. If you're lying about that, why would you die for it, right? There's no benefit to keeping the lie going all the way up till death. So believers could be wrong about their experiences, but it's tough to claim they're all lying because they don't seem to benefit tremendously monetarily, power-wise from it. Okay, what about mistaken? What if they're just, they're good-natured, they're not liars, they're not trying to be cult leaders, but it's like a hallucination, a mirage. It's not insanity, but it's a wrong sensory experience, right? It feels like the room's spinning when it's really not. And again, emotions can deceive us. So it could be an emotional pull. If you remember the Christmas Carol with Scrooge and Marley, there's a great point when Marley's the first ghost that Ebenezer meets. And at first he's obviously taken back, scared, and then he sort of starts laughing and gets totally at ease. And Marley asks him, why this change in your demeanor? And his answer is, because you are nothing but like a bad piece of sausage. You're nothing but a dream or a vision. Like, I ate something, it messed me up, but you're not real. So I'm just mistaken about you, so there's nothing to fear. Now, what Scrooge is doing is he's recognizing there's times when we should doubt our experiences. When the things we're seeing or feeling, we have good reason to say, no, that's probably not genuine. And I let you guys pause and think a little bit about what times have you felt something, seen something, heard something, and you have good reason to say, hold on, I don't know if I can trust that. Right? Now, how do we test those? So if you think about it, if you have an experience and you're not sure, typically what you do is if anyone's around you, you turn to them and say, did you hear that? Did you see that? Did you feel that? As a way to confirm. And now, to me, this matters that there are so many Christians around the world. Because if you turn to believers around the world and say, hey, have you experienced God this way? And they say yes. Now you have millions of people confirming each other's experiences, which again, doesn't automatically prove it, but should give you support. And as a young believer, I felt like I had tremendous support as I began to meet believers who weren't just from Akron, where I was at, but were from North Carolina and Virginia and Indiana and Pennsylvania. And they were all talking about God doing something similar in their hearts as he was doing in mine. So typically, if you see, feel, or experience something, you turn to the people around you and they say, yes, I saw, felt, experienced that same thing. You usually give experiences the benefit of the doubt. Now, there are times when you should doubt your experiences. If you are on pain medication or taking drugs, then you can believe that, you know what, that pink unicorn flying around the room probably isn't real, right? That experience is too bizarre and you have reason to doubt it. If you have severe dehydration or anxiety or stress, then you have reason to doubt your experiences. But again, if none of those things, if you know you're in sound mental health, you're in sound physical health, no drugs or system, then usually you give your experiences the benefit of the doubt. Okay. Now, what about genuine experiences? Well, we have them. And we as believers, we have good reason to trust our experiences, right? Because the other options don't seem great. I don't know about you, but I don't feel mentally unstable, mental illness. I've not been diagnosed with any mental illness. I have no reason to doubt my experiences with drugs or dehydration, right? My experiences with God are so many and varied throughout my life. I can't trace them all to, well, it's all when I'm super hungry or this or that. So I trust those. I would know if I was lying, and I know I'm not lying. Then I turn around and there's millions of believers who say, I've had the same experience with God or similar experiences. They happen when I'm in emotional states that are fine, right? I don't feel like I'm manipulating myself. And so there's no good reason to mistrust them. So now the temptation, and often in this argument, people say, well, hold on. There's millions of believers, yes, but they believe in different gods. And so how do you, if your experience of Jesus is genuine, and their experiences of Allah are genuine, then those can't both be true, so we throw them all out. Well, you'll see there under A, don't think an all or nothing, right? So of these options, right, you got insanity, you have mistaken, you have lying, and you have genuine. I believe all four of those are in play. It's not either all people's spiritual experiences are true or they're all lies. It's no, some could be this, some could be that. And so you see, I don't have to choose all or nothing in this regard. I can very much doubt, so our Vissarion from the cult video, I can very much doubt him and say, I think he's lying. And yet, when my pastor talks about what the Lord laid on his heart last week, I can very much think, oh, that sounds genuine, because he's not asking for everyone to give him $1 million. You know, I know his character and his history, and he doesn't show any signs of mental instability. So some people might very well be insane, and their experiences might be part of that. Others could be lying. Others could be mistaken. But it's tough to rule out all genuine and say none of them can be that. Now, the other question I think for young believers, or probably less believers, but young people, is what about if they haven't had these big experiences with God? Now, notice, and this is true probably for my kids and others, we accept people's experiences of things we've never experienced. So I've never been to war, but I read stories, I hear people talk about it, I know a little bit of what it's like. I've traveled limitedly, but I when people or students go, oh, we went to Costa Rica on J-term, we went to Florida, we went to, or other people go to Hawaii and places and tell me about it. I don't call them insane. I don't say they're lying. I accept their experiences as genuine. So if other believers are around you telling you this, and you feel like you trust those people and you know those people, you might have good reason to accept God's existence based on the experience of others. And it would be entirely possible that God could exist and not everyone would have the same experience of him or equal experiences of him. To me, it would be really, really tough for atheists to deny our experience of God, to say all of you are mistaken because I haven't experienced him. That doesn't seem to check out for me, because though I haven't experienced war, I don't deny all people who've ever been to war that experience. So in the end, that's what we have here, right? We have these options. We have insanity, we have mistaken, we have deception, or we have genuine. I think at least when you come to the numbers of people who claim to meet God, who know God, who had a relationship with God, it seems best case is to assume at least some of them are genuine, and thus gives us another clue for the existence of God. All right, guys, thanks. Good job.